Alright, in this video we are going to be creating a drawstring bag like you see right here. But before we get started, we need to learn a couple of terms. This is the loom. The loom is a frame or a machine which the weaving is done on. This particular loom is made out of a piece of stiff cardboard here. It has all these notches that are pre-cut in this. You could create your own loom out of a piece of cardboard, piece of stiff chipboard like you see here, out of a piece of wood. Looms could be made out of all kinds of different things. We are going to set up our loom and have it start to look like you see here. This is a weaving that is halfway done here. We're going to set it up by creating these threads that you see going in a vertical line here. These vertical threads are called the warp. And this forms the base of the weaving. To warp something means to string the thread onto the loom. So we are going to warp our loom and get it set up for weaving. The weft is the horizontal threads that you see here, and those are woven across the warp. When we first put a line of thread through, we're going to need to do what's called beading in. And you do that by pushing the thread down into the row before. So you're going to bead it in. And you can do that with a beater, which can be anything. It can be your fingers, it can be a stick or a fork or a comb, an old toothbrush. This is an old beat up, stiff, dried out toothbrush. You could use, or not toothbrush, paintbrush. You could use this to beat down the thread, but you want to tightly pack the threads in each row so that you have a nice tight weave so that your bag isn't all loose and has holes in it and so on. We're also going to be using a needle, a large eye hole needle like this, to run our thread through, and we're also going to be using different kinds of yarn like this. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get our loom set up. With these particular looms, they come, like I said, pre-cut, but they have a tendency to have a little tiny connection right at the edge or the seam there. So I usually like to go through and separate each one of those little sections so that I can make sure that my yarn is going to go through nice and easily when I start to put my loom together and put in the warp. So I'm going to separate each one of these on both sides. Now, when I am ready, I want to determine where the top, front of my loom is. I'm going to be starting in that first notch right there. And I'm even going to indicate where the back is as well for easy reference. So when we get our yarn, it comes in a skein like you see here. When you get yarn, do not unwrap it from the outside of the yarn. Usually there's yarn that comes out through the center. If you pull through the center here, it will not tangle up on you. The first thing we're going to do when we are setting up our loom and creating the warp is we're going to start by placing the yarn so that about 6 inches or so hangs down in the first notch like this. Now the rest of the yarn is going around the back side. That's why we have it indicated here on for the back. What we are going to do is we're going to have this yarn come down through the back. We're going to go through the same first notch. So we come down like this. We go back, flip it around to the top again. We're going to come back up and place the yarn through that same first notch. So we went down through the back, came around, came back up through the same first notch. Now we need to move over to the second notch. So in order to do that, this is the back. We're going to move our yarn over by creating a little dash right here. So I'm going to take my yarn I'm going to place it over to the second dash, or second notch, and now the yarn is coming through the second crease here. So I'm going to come down through the second, come back up, and go up through. So now it has gone all the way around on both sides. Now we need to go through the third notch. So we're going to make a dash this time going this way. And if you notice how I did that, it works easier if you kind of pull it down, put your thumb on it, come back up, and then you can pull it through and then kind of pull until it tightens up. If you try to just come over like this, it can work, but sometimes it bends these tabs over too much. So I usually like to hold it down with my thumb, come back up so I'm going straight up, and then slide it through like that. Come down the back side, go up through the same third notch because we're in notch number 3 right now. Come back up through number 3. Now we need to make our dash on the back side for number 4. So we come like this, make our dash over, come down through number 4, come back up through number 4, and now we need to make our dash over this way to number 5, and so on. You keep doing this all the way across the whole time. And just repeat that. Down, back up through. Now I need to move over, so I'm holding it, sliding it over. Oops. Come through here. Come back up through. Come down through. Once you get the hang of it, it goes rather quickly. Now when you get to the last notch here, you're going to be coming through, you're going to come down to the last notch on the bottom, like this. You come through the last notch at the bottom, and instead of coming all the way back up to the top, we're going to leave it just attached at the bottom. So we're not coming back up on the back side here, we're just leaving it down here at the bottom. The reason for that, and we're going to cut this off, give ourselves a little tail that we can use to tie things off. The reason for that is because we need to have an odd number of strings for our warp, so that when we weave, it will always alternate the weaving. Okay, so when we're done, on this side we have 22 vertical strings in our warp, and on the back side we only have 21. That's necessary so that when we are weaving back and forth and we're wrapping around, it isn't an even number. Otherwise things wouldn't weave together. They would end up going through the same string all the time. To have it be an odd number, it creates the pattern that's necessary, and I'll explain and show that in just a second.